Agojie, 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 Wusu, Wusu, Wusu. That's right. I have seen The Woman King, and here is my review. So, boom, let's talk.
We fight not just for today,
Don't know.
but for the future. We are a warrior people.
I loved it. I'll just say straight up, I loved it. I enjoyed myself. It was the first time I had been in the movie theater since COVID, and I was super excited because I went to the Harlem Theater, AMC Theater off of Frederick Boulevard, Douglas. I thought that was just perfect, and wasn't many of us, only because I think the film came out in September and it's now December. So it's been a while since the movie came out, and me having a chance to properly see it. And so I enjoyed myself. I made a kind of day of it. So let's start from the beginning, the origins of how this film came to be, which I don't know if many people do. So a particular actress by the name of Maria Bello was in Africa just for personal reasons, vacationing and exploring, I would assume, like we do when we travel, and was introduced to this story about this tribe of women who protected their tribe against other African empires that were part of the slave trade. And she decided she wanted to tell the story, so she flew back to LA, and she wanted Viola Davis to play the main actress, which is General Naniska, but she didn't know how to do it, and so she, luck would have it, was presenting an award to Viola Davis in 2015, and she said that she took that opportunity, that after she gave her award and they were off camera, that she kind of approached Viola Davis about this movie, and Viola wanted to do it. So Viola then brings the story back to her husband, and her husband had been for some time deciding on opening a production company and what that meant, and were doing their homework in that regard, but also they were not getting much help from people in Hollywood to get this film made. It took some time to get the things rolling. So Maria Bello found someone to help her write the script, which they did. And once you write the script, then you can go into finding director and your actors and your lighting and your choreographer and your stylist and your the person who's in charge of costume and makeup and all that jazz, because you get a budget. Okay, but if you have a script and you have no budget, you can't do anything. And that's pretty much what happened. And it wasn't until the success of Black Panther that they got the funding they needed to then proceed to do the film. Now, people may not know this, but Lupita Nyong'o was supposed to be in the film playing the role of Nawe, which was played beautifully by Tusu. But as most things happen, things change. I'm assuming Black Panther 2 was happening, and it was a scheduling conflict, and she couldn't do it because they didn't start filming the movie till November 2021. I know, it's crazy. They were starting the film. They started talking about the film from 2015, and it didn't get actually shot until November 2021, and it took about 5 months, a little bit longer, because there were obviously COVID, there were shutdowns and stuff like that, but they all went to Africa, shot this film, and leading up to shooting this film, they did 4 months of training. So can you imagine 4 months, and that meant 90 minutes of weight training with weights, and then another 3 hours of martial arts, sword, hand-to-hand combat for 3 hours a day. So basically roughly almost 5 hours a day worth of physical training on their bodies to get themselves ready for this movie. So thank you to all the actors and the team that were dedicated to getting themselves physically in shape for the movie, because we see the work. And I also remember watching an interview on The View, I believe, with the cast, and they were just talking about being in a comfortable space with the fact that they didn't have to worry about who was doing their hair, because the person who did their hair looked like them and would know what to do with their texture hair. The person who was the makeup artist knew how to do makeup on their face. The person who was in charge of lighting, they didn't have to worry about looking ashy on screen or a little bit discolored. Like, these are all the things that has been an ongoing conversation in the entertainment industry in regards of people of color. And to hear these women, you know, say, like, I felt comfortable going into work, feeling safe, feeling like I was at home because there was so many people that looked like me and embraced me, and I didn't have to feel like I had to walk on eggshells and stuff like that. It was great to see. And you see it on screen. Like, I don't know about you, but when I watched the movie, I could feel the sense of joy everybody had being on set. When you're relaxed and you're having a good time, your performance is that much more better, I think. So when something is like, when you don't feel safe and you don't feel free as a performer, it constricts your work. And I've been in plenty of situations to know that to be true. And you know, you have to be careful what you feel like. You have to be careful of what you say, because as a woman of color, you don't want to seem to be too strong-willed, or that you have an attitude, or all the like usual things that we hear our counterparts misconstrue, because sometimes they're just not used to the different way you look at things and the perspective you bring and the culture you bring to something. And sometimes it can wind up into some form of jealousy, where it's better to try to knock you down than try to help you elevate that and be more and great and walk in that. And so I applaud everybody. The director, Gina Black-Howard, did a marvelous job telling the story, and I mean, from Viola Davis to Tusu to Lashana, who we've seen in a couple of films. She's blossoming as an actress as well in her own right, and John Boyega. It was just such a great cast to see, because it wasn't just that they were Black, they were not a particular shade. I didn't have to worry about colorism, which is also a big thing, is that there tends to be people of a certain, can't speak today, a certain shade of Black gets more opportunities than people darker skin tone. And so, you know, I love that we were celebrated in this way, and I think thank you to Ryan Coogler for doing Black Panther and for it having such the success it did. It was able to open doors for this film to be told, and hopefully more films with other ideas and thoughts and stories that can be told in that right as a result. The storyline that stood out to me the most is the storyline of what it meant to be a woman at this time in history and the value of a woman. So we find out as the film progresses that you either are married, and to help your family you have to marry wealthy, or you become a concubine of the king, or you become a warrior. Like, these are your only options. And if you don't, like, what are you to do? And we find out that General Naniska was captured, she was raped, and she bore a child. And that's all I'm gonna say about the film without telling the story of the film. But to know that even in the 18th, 19th century, this idea of men using women as sexual objects, this is a demon that we've been dealing with for the beginning of time. And it's like, okay, in 2022, we're still dealing with this demon. of men who think that they are above reproach, above decorum, above dignity. And I think what I liked about the two guys that came from Portugal, the one, I can't remember the character's name. One was Malik. That was the guy who was half Dome and half, I say Portuguese. They weren't from Portugal. They were from Brazil. They were from South America. I think that was even more intriguing. So these men that were from Brazil are coming to the continent. So not that much far travel when you think about it versus like coming from Europe. So they're coming from Brazil, which they probably originally came from Portugal, because let's be real, Brazil, Portugal, they both speak Portuguese. But the one guy was named Malik, and he was half Dome and half Brazilian. And it was that moment where there's this great big battle scene towards the end where these friends are no longer friends, because the reality is he is half black and he's half this African tribe, and his loyalty is more to that than to anything else. It's part of his identity. And I thought the choice that was made as a result was really well done. I love the fact that even though there was a sex scene, we didn't have to see it. I just think it was just well done. It was, but that was one of the storylines that really stuck out in my head, because to hold the shame of rape, you can destroy a woman, but for General Naniska, she took that and put it into her fighting and put it into how she made her decisions. And even when her world flips upside down, she's able to just come into what she knows, which is her training as an Agojie, and this respect that she's garnered from the people because she's protected them and she's helped these women become strong. Inevitably is what makes her become the Woman King. And I think it's a great time to watch for all. So please go see The Woman King if you haven't already. You will thoroughly enjoy it, and I give this movie an A, an A++, an A++, an A++. And another thing about The Woman King before I go is that I don't know if many remember this movie, but there was a movie back in I want to say it came out in the 70s or the 80s, I can't recall, but it was Shaka Zulu, and the film made me remember that movie as a memory, because I remember watching that movie, and I think Grace Jones is in it, and her being so beautiful and saying like, those are the types of movies that I want to see, like movies that highlight royalty, people of color that had power, and people of color that influenced our society in such a positive way. And sometimes it is the struggle of this thing called jealousy, where a European nation or an Americans would come in and they see this and they want it, and they felt the only way they could get that was to steal it and to kill these people to get that, or enslave these people. And I think we've forgotten a major part of our history is that a lot of the wealth of the world did come from Africa, and a lot of the resources and a lot of the spices we use. So if it wasn't for the continent, and next week we will talk Black Panther 2, I promise. So have a great week and see you next week. Bye.